Hey guys, so last night Canon announced a successor to the extremely popular Nifty Fifty, the Canon 50mm 1.8 This new Nifty Fifty is called the Canon 50mm 1.8 STM, and it's got some pretty huge improvements. The old 50mm was exceptional for the price, but it had some big issues that pushed a lot of people to go for a higher quality 50mm like the Canon 1.4 or the Zeiss ZE. The biggest problem with the old 50mm 1.8 was the build quality. It was built out of probably the same plastic as what they use in Happy Meal toys, but it had great optics, and that led to the nickname the Plastic Fantastic. It was kind of like using an easy bake oven that made actual cakes, like sharp, bokeh-licious cakes. But the bokeh that you got out of that wide aperture was pretty crappy. It was busy, and it had a lot of chromatic aberration. And just to top it all off, the autofocus was slow and noisy, and it didn't always get the mark that you were hoping for, even if you had a really nice autofocus system in your camera body. But even with all these flaws, it was hugely popular, and that's because it was like $100. Most places you can get it for about $110, and it was a pretty big upgrade from the kit lens that most people started out with, giving low light performance and nice sharp optics from a prime lens. The image quality is staying the same. Now, the 50mm 1.8 was pretty good in terms of sharpness at the center, and it was really nice stop down. Wide open, it was okay, but not fantastic. It was usable, but nothing to write home about. With the new 1.8 STM, this isn't looking to change very much. Now, obviously we don't have any real-world samples, but what we can tell from looking at the MTF curves is that in the center, they're going to be almost exactly the same, especially when stopped down. At f8, they're almost identical. At f1.8, when they're totally wide open, the center is staying similar, but the corners are getting a pretty big improvement. Now that's good news. Of course, any increase in sharpness is appreciated, but don't be expecting a huge miracle because the optics are not changing much at all. What we're seeing is the same amount of lens elements in the same amount of groups, so that leads me to believe that they're not changing the optical setup at all. They're just making small improvements in the glass and the coating, and that should provide us with a little bit better sharpness in the center and pretty significant increase in sharpness in the corners. From the press release, we do know that Canon put a new SSC coating on the 50mm 1.8 STM, and what that's going to do is increase the contrast. It's going to reduce ghosting and flare issues, and it's going to improve the color rendition as well. Now, all of these are going to be fairly small changes. It's not going to be a ridiculous increase in the image quality, but again, any improvement is nice. And these changes are pretty nice for videographers, especially since there's less tweaking that we can do in post as opposed to when you're shooting a raw photo image that you can change a lot of them in Photoshop or Lightroom. Now, what should be radically improved is the bokeh. In the old 50mm 1.8 we had 5 aperture blades, and they were partially rounded, they weren't fully rounded. And what that gave us is a kind of busy, distracting bokeh that wasn't soft or creamy, and when you stopped down, it would get this strange kind of fat pentagon shape, and it wasn't very pleasing to the eye. With the new STM lens, we're getting fully circular aperture blades, and we're getting 7 of them. And what that's going to do, what it should do, is create circular bokeh out of focus shapes at all f-stops, and it should give us softer, creamier bokeh. Now, Canon finally listened to our pleas in terms of the build quality. The 50mm 1.8 STM is getting the metal lens mount that's back from the very first iteration of Canon's 50mm 1.8. Now this is something that the 1.8 Mark II didn't have, and it led to a very cheap feeling lens, especially when you were putting it on and off. You were never really sure if it was going to snap off in your hand. With the new STM, this shouldn't be an issue anymore. And what we're also seeing is that the lens is getting shorter by 0.1 inches. However, it's actually increasing in weight by a full ounce. And that should give it a denser feeling, which will feel more quality in the hand. Now, of course, they don't have any published information on the plastic body of the lens, but what we can pretty safely assume is that it'll be a similar plastic to the rest of the STM lenses that we've been seeing so far. And what that means is that the quality of the plastic will be a pretty significant increase. It's pretty hard to get any worse than the old 1.8 plastic, so that'll be a really nice thing to have, and it should increase the feel in the hand a bit. The other physical change that we're seeing is a smaller filter thread diameter. Now we're going from a 52mm to a 49mm. And that'll mean all of your filters, screw-in lens hoods, or any other accessories that you had for the old 50 won't work on this new one, but you can get a 49mm to 52mm filter step-up ring. And that'll adapt all of your accessories and filters with no vignetting or anything like that. And they should be pretty cheap. I'm pretty sure you can find them from China on eBay for like $3 or $4. The final change that they made is going from the old micromotor autofocus system to STM. And that's really exciting because the old autofocus on the 50mm 1.8 was, in a word, crappy. It was slow, it was oftentimes inaccurate, and it was really noisy and annoying. It had a high-pitched whine. Actually, I have my old 50mm 1.8 right here, so this is what it sounds like. No, gross. With the STM, what we're getting is silent focusing, we're getting faster focusing, we're getting smoother focusing, and we're getting more accurate focusing. Especially for video, the silent thing is going to be a huge feature because it means that we can use autofocus while recording instead of having to autofocus beforehand and then manual focus afterwards. What it also means is that we're getting full-time manual focusing. Full-time maybe being a misnomer because it's actually only when we have the meter active. Because this is a focus by wire system, the lens has to be getting power from the camera body to be able to focus. So you're not getting full-time focusing, but you are getting it without having to flip the switch on the lens body like you did with the old one. The price is the same as the old one, which is good news. It's retailing at $125 right now, US dollars. What we saw with the old one is that when it was announced, it was the same price, and then as time went on, it got cheaper until it was street retailing about $100 to $110. And what we'll see is probably the same pattern with this one. It'll start around $125, and it's actually available for pre-order at B&H right now for $125. And as time goes on, probably in a year or two, we'll start seeing it go down towards 110 or 100. This lens will be available at the end of May. It's available for pre-order right now from B&H and Adorama, the usual places. I have one on pre-order. I pre-ordered it as soon as the announcement came out, so I should have it within, the first 50, 100 or so people in the country from B&H. I'm going to try and put out a review as soon as possible. What'll probably happen is I'll do a unboxing and first impressions and a little bit of a physical comparison, and that'll be out as soon as I get the lens. And then in another month or month and a half, I'll have a more thorough kind of long-term review and some more thorough comparisons with my 50mm 1.82, which is the old Nifty 50, and a comparison with the Zeiss ZE manual focus 1.4, which is a little bit higher market, and it's a little bit nicer build quality and nicer image quality, but it'll be nice to see how they stack up. And I'm predicting the new 1.8 STM to be kind of smack in the middle between those two. And we'll see if I can maybe rent the Canon 1.4 and the 1.2L and have a little bit of a continuum in terms of the 50mm offerings. So thanks for watching the video. I'm really excited for this new 1.8 STM, and subscribe to my channel so that you get the notifications of the new videos as soon as they come out, and I'll see you guys next time.